All right, I've got a little bit of video there, so I know I'm recording and make sure of that. Good. As I promised, I'm back with the second part of Thursday night, and of course we did 80 minutes, and under the law we're to do 150, so I have 70 more minutes to fill. But I'm going to do a follow-up, and again, I want to alert you to a couple of resources. I think, first of all, one that covers data warehouse concepts and architectures, what we mean by those. This is from the University of Colorado in Denver, and an excellent PowerPoint that walks you through the whole idea of why we the strategies that we use to design databases or data warehouses, and then the architectures that go along with them. And so you see that we talked about transaction processing versus business intelligence processing. You can go through these much faster than I can simply by reading them. But you know, the main thing is to make sure that you understand some about the two different schema, okay, for a data warehouse and an operational database, how those all kind of fit together. I'm going to go back over here to the modules section, okay, and let's look at it. And as I had mentioned yesterday, there's a file here. We'll look here. And in the files, it has, we'll go in here, pardon me, with the files section. And there's a file called upload. And these are the uploads for the 4 access workshops. Okay. And either one of these, you can use either one of them. But what that will do is it will tell you, and we'll just, since we've got this open here again, let's put these out into a larger font size, 1816. I'll make these all 16s. The uploads here are Access Workshop number 1. There is a zip file, the Rockoff zip file, and we went through this last night, that has the data warehouse, okay? And then for Access Workshop 2, we have a facts table that we had exported into Excel. And you remember we talked about fact tables and what they're all about. Then for Access Workshop number 3, we have a table that deals with geographical sales, okay? And this is an XLS file that we have exported, okay? And it shows us how we can use, how we work with hierarchical. We talked about this using a hierarchical approach in terms of mining for data, and the natural hierarchies, if you will, that exist, a type of product and a specific product, and then a certain model of a specific product. For example, you know, you see this in cars. You know, there's a Chevy, there's a then there's a Trailblazer. You can even say what year, and then a Trailblazer, and then if it has some kind of specific models like an LX or something like that. Same thing with geography. Some things just naturally lend themselves to a hierarchy. And then we have the sales database, and this is an access file that's in that Rockoff zip file, and we'll be talking about it and looking at it as well. But one of the things I really do want to get accomplished today, and just in this part of this part 2 of the lecture time or the class time, is to talk about dimensional modeling. And as I mentioned, as I spoke with you last night, if you go over to the Rockoff textbook, you'll see chapter, I'd said I really want you to read in preparation for next week, chapter 14 and chapter 15, okay, that cover dimensional modeling, okay. 14 covers dimensional modeling, 15 covers the data warehouse, and then go back to 13 and then go to 16 that walks us through the whole process. Now, there are some things in the text that I think are worth you seeing. So this is this again is the Rockoff text, the blue one, data analysis with access for 2010. And over on, and I just want to give you some of what I think are the highlights, okay? And he uses a term in there over on page 293. He talks about online transactional processing systems, okay? This is basically a part of an e-commerce operation. And these are things that handle transactions online. They process them. That transaction could be you log in. The transaction could be you select something. The transaction could be you register for the site to have access to it. The transaction could be you buy something. You update your personal data. Who knows? Okay. Now, this is a course in data admin, and we talk about the nature of databases and data warehouses and how to use them. And it's not on web programming or the underlying types of web programmings or structures that you use to embed a database into a website so you can do the online part. That programming is really the realm of the folks over in computer science, okay? But I do want to make sure that you understand that, okay? And as he mentions there, business intelligence systems are really about retrieving data. Okay, and so you're going to hear that he mentions that we denormalize data. Okay, and so we take data that were so-called normalized. Okay, and we denormalize it. Now, again, he talks about the typical star schema. All right, and so I'm going to go down to this Rockoff zip files, and I'm going to open it up. Okay, here they are. I'm going to download it, excuse me. Okay, and I'm just going to take these and shove them on, make sure I'm still recording. Good. I'm going to shove them on the desktop. Copies of them. And here's the data warehouse. I'm going to open this up, okay? And you'll see all the access objects. We have the tables, we have the queries. And those are the two types of objects that we're dealing with. Now I'm going to open up this dimension product. In fact, I think I'll just open up the dimension channel. And as you know, we can open up a table and see it in the design view for a table. And here we have two fields. One's is the channel ID, and then the other is a channel. They're both text. Now they could be numbers, but we choose to go ahead and use the numbers as text. Okay, and basically, we don't require these, although we might want to. It would be smart. But the bottom line is, here we're looking at marketing channels. As I mentioned last night, but I want to go into greater detail. Dimensional modeling means I think about my company in terms of the kinds of information it handles and needs. Okay, and that has to run through the entire value chain. Okay, and and I'm using value chain in terms of when the product or service bundle is originated somehow, or the materials are put together, all the way down to the point where the customer receives that product service bundle and gives us feedback. Okay, so now these are marketing channels: internet, mail, or phone. This is how our customers reach us to make a purchase. And obviously, we want to know which one of these they use the most. It would be stupid if we didn't. And so we recognize that we have these channels. Now, this is also not what we not call, and you'll see him use the term over there, I think in chapter 14 or 15, slowly changing dimensions. In other words, we've got internet, mail, phone. You know, I'm not sure what else that we would have in terms of a marketing channel. And we would most certainly want to make sure that we define these. What are they? What do we mean? And we do that, of course, back here in the design view. So we basically started with the question, how do people buy stuff from me? And we've given each channel an ID. The reason is it's less space, okay? And you know, we could, and we give them a channel ID, really to kind of use it like a primary key. But you're going to notice, and we'll go to the design view here, that there is no primary key. And one of the things that's characteristic of a data warehouse is it will have many dimension channel tables without a primary key, but we'll still link things up. Now, the next thing is dimension we're looking at here is the customer. Who are my customers? Okay. Now, obviously, this is a very, very, very truncated, simplistic example. Okay. But let's look at the elements that we have here. All right. Let's look at those. We have a customer ID. Okay. Now let's go for a moment to the design view and see if the customer ID, all right, is a primary key, and it's not. And this is something sometimes that can surprise us when we look at a warehouse, data warehouse, because we don't have primary keys. Okay, and you know, for all intents and purposes, this is, now you understand a little bit where we talk about the fact that we denormalize data when we start to build business intelligence. Okay, and you'll start to see that and to understand that. And the when we provide data structure to a data analyst, this is a process, and the textbook talks about it. It's this process of denormalization. And that is, I'm looking at the database as an end user, not as a database designer. Okay? So I don't really care if I have primary keys in here or not, although I would, because you need to have some kind of identifier. Now, what will happen is, you know, people will argue, well, the truth is that each of these records are unique. You're not going to have the same Stan Smith, etc. Although you very well could. You could have several Stan Smiths that live in Chicago, Illinois, in the same zip code. It's possible. So what's missing here? Well, one of the issues that I would raise is, I look at this, I would say, look, I don't see a street address. Okay, so this dimension table has a geographic element. I can pop this out and put it into something else, into a little mapping uh, into a map. But I certainly, without the street address, I could have 3 or 4 Elaine Craig's, and then I know who I'm dealing with. Okay, and who bought everything from Frank Rosen. So I want to be careful about this. All right. So one of the things as we denormalize, and the authors set this up such, would be for me, if we were in the classroom right now, for me to ask you, is what's missing from this table? And one of you is going to say the street address. Another person might say, where's the phone number? Another person might say, where's their email address? Okay? And those are all legitimate questions. Those are all legitimate concerns. Okay? Because we don't have that type of information. Now, here in this data warehouse, you're also going to notice something. Because it's a warehouse, it assumes that we move fairly large amounts of data. In other words, a sizable set of records. So you'll see that we have an append query. Okay? And let's look at the design of it. And append queries can be used to take a bunch of data and add it to a table. Now, as I look here, here's something quite interesting. I'm seeing some primary keys. But look at the prefix on the name. These are production tables. Okay? And the difference between a dimensional table and a production table is simple. The production table is actually one that I need to use to procure data. And so the rules on production tables are, I've got to make sure I've got them linked. I've got to make sure that I have all unique records. And I do so. And we'll see that up here as we go. But let's go back here to this dimension. And obviously, there's some stuff that's in here that needs to be added in. Okay? So we've got the dimensional. I'm going to close that append table, that query, excuse me. And we'll hold on to it till it's time. Now, the next thing we have is a dimension called the sales type. Let's open that. There are two things, orders or returns. Okay? Now, if we are dealing with a finished product or essentially a finished good or service, okay, a finished product or a finished product service bundle, or we're offering service and the person subscribes or signs up and then they'll start to receive the service, okay, then this makes sense. There are going to be some times, though, when you might have to say, no, wait a minute, okay, there's something else I want to know about this. And you say, well, what's that? Well, I'd like to know if it's an order type, okay, or the sales type. Is it cash or credit? Dimension tables are designed, see, to get us to think about that type of stuff. And realistically, I might say an order. I might have an order, an OC, a CL, a cash order, and then return is obvious. I'm returning it, and then I may have a receivables order, or say an RO. Okay, but as we're figuring here, we're dealing with a cash and carry kind of business. But again, if we're doing some business to business sale where we're extending trade credit, that's going to be a whole other kettle of fish. Okay, this is important stuff, and I know it's not real exciting, but these are the kinds of things that dimension tables and dimension modeling and the whole process are supposed to get us thinking about. Well, here's time, okay? And notice we have the sales date and we have the fiscal quarter. All right? What quarter was it in? So we do quarterlies, and obviously we can add the quarterlies up to get a semi-annual, and then we could add the quarters up to get an annual figure if we cared to do that. But this says right now, in terms of time, we want to know the date and the fiscal quarter. So here we have a hierarchical dimension where we have the quarter, fiscal quarter, and then the date. And really, in truth, we could have the fiscal quarter, the month, pardon me, the fiscal quarter, the year, the month, and the day. We have all that data in there. And let's do this for a moment. And let's try to run a query. So I'm going to click. I'm going to close the time dimension time, and I'm going to click external, and I'm going to click create, and I'm going to do a query design, and I'm going to get the dimension time. I'm going to add it, and I'm going to get the sales date and the fiscal quarter. And my criteria is and let's see what happens. I didn't get anything here. Now, let's go back down to the design view and let's put like 6, 1, and let's see what we get. Okay, so we've got some invalid syntax here. So we'll try this like. And these may be, they're entered as dates, so we may have a trouble. I'm going to try it with the hashtag to see if that'll pull it, work it for us. Nope, not going to. Well, we've got one little other we can do. The criterion could be and let's see if we can pull up all the sales, pardon me, for June 1 to 2011. Let's see if we can get that. And there they are. Okay. Now, we could put between June 1, and we'll go down here and we'll do this. And we'll use the, try the between function here. Now, hopefully I'm going to get everything between the 1st and the 16th. Let's see what I get. Other times we've got a mismatch here. I think I misspelled between. We have an invalid string in it. Let's see if this works for us. There we go. I'm sorry about my silliness there. We got all the sales dates, and we really wanted to hold it down to between 6. So I think we're going to need to between. I got everything in there. And let's do this. That was my mistake. Was 2016. I want everything between 6 and 2001. Let's see what we get here. There we go. I apologize. So we got everything between 6.1 and 6.16. Okay. So we were able to do a little work here with this. Now, again, if we look on the dimension timetable, we'll be able to see that, well, they're treated as dates. And since they are, yeah, we're in good shape. Now, if I had 1,000 of these, what I'm going to do is run the query, okay, or I'm just going to close this as I don't want it. I would run the query and then export it to get rid of it. Now, let's talk some more about the dimension modeling, and I'm going to skip the fact cells, and I'm going to look for a moment at a production table. So I'm going to close all. Okay. Now, over on page 296, as he talks about the snowflake schema, and we talked some about that. And then he talks about the fact sales table, okay? And then we've talked about primary keys, attributes, dimensions, dimensional tables, solid chain dimension. And that's really, we've blown through chapter 14, okay? Now, we want to move over into talking about, okay, production tables, all right? And those production tables at times are pretty, you know, they can be pretty easily understood. Okay, and if you take a look over on page 307, okay, you're going to see where they talk about a production database. Okay. And a production warehouse. This is where basically we take the dimensions we've created, all right, and we begin to link them into a fact. We provide the basis for linking them into a fact sales table. Let's look at this for just a minute. Take a look at it. Here we are, category ID. Okay, and now we know we've moved away from just dimensional kinds of things to, well, let's look at the production channels of the design. We now say, okay, here's what it is. And notice that we have a primary key. The primary key, excuse me, now allows us to create foreign keys to bury one key, one field that's a foreign key, as you remember, is a primary key in one table, and then it's just a key in another table. Okay? And the whole idea of the production table is to do what? Well, it's to produce data for all intents and purposes. And so, you know, these are things that lend themselves to the development, all right, of the of the facts table. And you know, you could see there, and I'm over looking at chapter 15, like for example, over on page 311, the author talks about creating these types of tables. And then over on 313, he shows us where we begin to link tables up using primary keys. Okay? Now, I'm going to close this off for a moment, and I'm going to close off this production category table. And we'll just go through all of them. You're going to see, again, they'll have a primary key, and there will be definitions. So what we've done is we've gone from kind of a conceptual thing okay, to a table that's active, okay, that we use. And here's production order detail. There's a design view for it again, okay. I'm going to close these for just a minute. And I'm going to click on the dashboard tools, and I'm going to click on relationships, and let's see if any of them, if they're going to show us any of them. I guess they're not going to here, but we'll be able to see them as we go through. All right, now, and each of these have a primary key. Each of these have field properties, parameters. Notice here on the production order summary, we have 1, 2, 3 foreign keys. All right. And I guess the best way to think of it is like this. The dimension tables are like a blueprint, okay? The production tables, the dimension channels, those tables, oh, let's say they are like an artist's rendition of the house, okay? And then the production tables are the blueprints, okay? What we use to build and to work with. That's the best way I know how to explain them for them to make, you know, a lot of sense for you, to you. Now, I'm going to close this off for just a second. And now we're ready to look at the fact sales. And I'm going to open it up. Now, let's go down into the design view. And you'll notice something very interesting. This fact sales table does not have a primary key. Unlike the production tables, we don't have those. Okay? So we have a fact sales table that has the sales date, the ID of the customer, the channel ID, the salesperson. All of these codes and keys, and it provides us that fact sales. Now, now that we have the order numbers here, okay, sales dates, etc. Now, if I wanted to, these data, all right, lend themselves primarily to a fairly low level of analysis because I'm really looking at categories here and the dates. And we'll look at that type of situation when we look at the fact sales table. Okay? So these are just a set of facts, transactions that occurred. So again, we've moved from just kind of conceptualizing things, or to this is kind of saying, okay, let's put all of the I'm organizing the contents of a freezer in a store. Let's put all the dairy products, you know, on the right-hand side to the customer. Let's put these other products, what would be the customer's left-hand side, and then here's where we're going to put specific things and mark them, and so we have the shelves all marked off. Okay, that's one of the best ways I know to think about production tables versus dimension tables. The key thing is the existence, okay, of that primary key. The primary key allows me to link tables. Okay? Now, let's close these off for a second. We'll close this. And we're going to come down and look at the queries, okay, in this warehouse. Let's talk first of all about the append query. Now I'm going to open it up. It says you're about to run an append query that will modify data in your table. And it says, hey, you're getting ready to change a table. Are you sure you want to do this? Okay. And I might say, I probably should say no. So let's look at the design view of this. Okay, and we'll see something kind of startling, but not, well, not really, not too surprising. We're going to see the product order summary and the product order detail. Notice, okay, that we have the order summary ID in the product order summary table. This is on the left. And then notice we've got the order summary ID as a foreign key in the other table. And this even utilizes a parameter query. And you say, what's a parameter query? It's where we ask the end user to specify certain information before the query will execute. Okay, and we even have a line we have the line price, and we have the line cost. And we can see the expressions that provide us those. So on the line price, for example, right here, we see the order quantity times the order price per unit. So if it's $10 a unit and you order 50 of them, it's 500 bucks. That's the price. The line cost is the order quantity times the order cost per unit. So we've added in here the line price, the line cost. We've got the order number over here. You can see how we've linked the two tables together. Now, just to refresh your memory, I'm going to click on that little line that says Join Properties. And here, and remember, we talked about the left table and the right table, or the parent and the child. And here we see a parent and child, a product order summary and product order detail. Remember, we talked about hierarchy. Hierarchical looks at data. And here I'm drilling down from the order summary down to product to the details. And I only include the rows where the join field from both tables are equal. In other words, an intersection, an inner join. Now let's go up top and take a look. I'll say, okay, you see it's going to ask us for a beginning date. And then once we provide a beginning date, it'll ask for an ending date. And we will append orders to those. All right. Now, this is useful if you want to move a whole bunch of orders at one time. But as we're going to see a little bit later, you want to have forms, and you'll typically, this will be an incremental process where you use forms. Okay? So I'm just going to close all here. No changes. Let's look at append returns. Same story there. This time we're using 3 tables. And notice what we're doing. We start with the product order summary. Then we go to the product return summary, and then we get the product order detail. So we look at the summary, we go from general to specific. That's that hierarchical, as I said, slice and dice, that hierarchical look that we can do. And again, here's a parameter query asking us for a beginning and ending date. So we'll close this. Now let's look at create channel. Sometimes we can use tables, we can use queries, excuse me, to create a table. Although in Access, I think just, use create, go to home and create a table. And the authors want to show you that, you can use a query to do just about everything, which you can. And here we're going to create a channel, okay? And we're going to create the channel tables. And let's go back up here and take a look at the data view. And there they are. And those are from the production channels. Now, in truth, I don't see the point of this, but it's the authors are wanting to show us, okay, and here's a table. Let's go down to create sales. Let's click on that for a minute, go to the design view. And here, we see the product order summary, okay, and the order summary ID, down to the order summary ID here, and we're going from the specific general to the specific, excuse me, and here we have the order number, and we have a criteria that starts at 1/1/2000. And let's just look at this for a minute. Okay. And if we don't have anything over there in the order product summary and in the product detail, we will get nothing. But let's put in a date that I think that we have. Now let's put in, and we use that pound sign, 6/1-2011. Now let's go to the data view. Oh, I forgot to add in the all right, now we've got that under the order date. Oh, it's 2011. Let's see what we get here. Huh, that's strange. I don't understand why I'm not getting something there. Because I'm pretty sure we have an order on the 1st. Let's go back up here. We're looking at the product order summary and the product order detail. Do we have some sales on that day? Let's open it up. No, that's why I'm getting it. Not because, okay. Let's close this. And let's do we're going to do our create sales. And the criteria would be 6/6/2011. And let's see what we get. I think we had a sale that day. And we did. Okay. Now, there's a process that we have to go through if we want to create the sale, okay? And this is just simply to let us look at sales for a given day, or to take data Okay. Let's just go back down to the design view and I'll be able to explain to you. Once we've entered a product order, once we've entered a record into the product order summary, okay, and then into the product order detail, okay, we're able then to create sales data from those. And that's pretty much it. We'll close this off, we'll make any changes, and then we'll click down here and we looked at to create the product, create the sales, create salespersons, okay? And again, now this query one, I'm going to open it up. We don't need that. So I'm going to close it, and then I'm going to get rid of it. We really don't need it. So we'll just delete it. Now, let's look at the reports for just a minute because we didn't do too much of that last night. But let's look at the report, and we'll open it up. And beginning date, and I'm going to put 6/1/2011, and I'm going to put 6/30/2011. And let's see what we get. Okay, we got everything between the 1st and the 30th. And this gives us total sales, total cost. And let's go down to the design view now and take a look at what we're doing. They ask us to put in a sale date, okay? And we get the sales date, and we're getting the total line price and the total line cost. But we have a parameter, okay, where we create a report. And this report is based upon beginning and ending dates. Okay? No big deal there. Then let's look at the report for sales. And we're going to see a parameter query here. Then we're going to see like, and then we're going to see the IF, and this is a search. We're giving customer, and then we find that we get that data. So you see we go through a series of queries. You'll notice now every one of these queries are really parameter queries. Let's look at the design again. There's the parameter. In a data warehouse, queries always have, okay, or should have. Here we're creating something here. But in these pure queries, they append, and we're not going to do that with customers, but to create the product, pardon me, we want to append orders, append returns. Then we're going to use parameter queries. Now there are two tables in here finally that we want to look at. And let's go back to the fact sales table. Okay? Now we have a lot of information here that's buried in all these data, and it will become just an issue of pulling it out. What day of the week, what day during June did we sell the most stuff? What day did we observe, what date did we absorb the highest line cost or the highest line price? Which salesman had the greatest amount of sales? How did one type of sale return versus orders, how did they rate out? What channels? Okay, and again, these fact sales table, that's why I have, again, I'll mention again, the fact sales, which will be an export. Now we have one other table here as we're talking about the dimension. And see, all these dimensions, they set this all up for us. Now, I'm going to come down and let's look at the DW sales query. And I'll move this on down. And here we see a very complex schema. Notice all we've got going on. We have a fact sales table. And this is really like, it's more of a snowflake schema, I think, than a star schema for a simple reason. From the fact sales, we have these generic dimensions. Then we can break them down to salespersons, etc. Sales type, that's a dimension, a dimension. Okay. And this is the DW sales, and we'll click here and view it, and there's everything. All right. Now, again, we've taken a look at really the highlights and talked about the highlights that are there in chapter 14 and chapter 15. Chapter 15 really emphasizes designing a star schema, and that's over there on page 307 with the production tables and their relationships for this database that we're working with. And then if you look on the bottom of page 307 and then all through page 308, it walks you through the construction of those. Okay? And he begins to talk about how we design this, create our dimensional tables, create the fact tables, okay? And thus we've created the data warehouse. And then we begin the process of querying that data warehouse. And notice this is, I'm kind of looking at the text page through 24, through 25. We're working with parameters, okay? And that's why, okay, you say, well, which one of these would I really want? Would I want to export this and take a look at it, or export the fact table? Okay, well, the sales table is going to have everything that you want to see plus all the descriptors. The fact table doesn't do that for you, or the fact sales table. See? So here we have everything explained. And looking at this very quickly, it's apparent, okay, that we have some missing data. We have data about the customer that's missing: their phone number, their street address. We might want to have the type of credit card they have, or their credit card number. We'd want to have something here that helps us create unique records And I, of course, can export this into Excel and do what I want. And so this kind of brings us to a point where chapters 13 and 16 that deal with pivot tables, we arrive at that point now where we realize, okay, I've collected all this data. I've organized how I've collected it. It makes sense. It's rational. Okay. And I've got my production tables created. And I've got some queries where I can append orders and append returns. Look, these we'll have some append. This stuff of appending data, all right, is really better left to using a form, unless you have a whole bunch of data orders that you want to append. Otherwise, it's usually going to be it's going to be an incremental process, and you're going to see that when we get to the sales database. You say, what are you talking about? What do you mean? Let me diminish this for a moment, okay? And I'll just and so you can see what I'm alluding to. And I'm going to open up the sales database. All right. Notice something. We have forms. And this is where we put in data. So we'll see these forms. Now in this one, that the forms there are really more for harvesting data than inputting data. But typically you'll want to have records flowing into your tables. And so you'd have forms that will be linked on in. Well, you say, gosh, this is just all kind of out there. We really haven't done much. We've done a lot because we've looked at how we put this warehouse together. We start off by saying, okay, what type of information, what information do I need? Okay, and then the data I collect, I can act on. And then we build a facts table, okay? And I'll open it back up again. And we'll go down and look at the design view of it. Okay. And now I'm going to do something here that will be helpful to us. I'm going to click on Database Tools. I've got this, and I'm going to click Relationships. I won't see any. But I'm going to click on Object Dependencies. Okay. You say, what does this tell me? It tells me where the data are from and where these data flow to. Objects that depend on me. That report, those two reports are dependent on this table. Objects that I depend upon, these dimension tables, and then the fact sales table. Okay. Now I have data, but I have data I can use for making decisions. And it just becomes a question. For example, which city, in what city do we sell the most cinnamon? Okay, in what zip code do we sell the most cinnamon? Or and when we get cinnamon, okay, what city do we get it from? And so there, there's query after query we could run here that would give us information for decision making. That's why when after this, we'll shift gears and we'll begin to look at now next week we'll start to look at uh, we'll begin to look at the sales data, the sales database. Okay, and what I can do with it, and then we'll look at these exports, these files that are over here, and what are they named? One is the fact sales AW2 export. Let's go look up here for a minute, and we'll find it. Here it is. I'm going to download it. It's the fact sales access workshop 2. It's an exported, and it's an XLS file I'd exported. I had imported data into this file or exported from the database. And here's the sales date, all the stuff, the customer ID, channel ID, etc. And now I can do some work with it. And so we'll use these to run pivot tables and see how useful they are. Okay? Well, I'm going to call it a day as far as this section. And once I have a sense of how long this is, if I haven't hit 150 minutes, I'll find something over at YouTube that would be useful. I'm probably going to do that anyway. So I'm going to stop the share now and stop the meeting. And I probably will go ahead and find something over there for you to look at, okay? And again, take a look at chapters 14 and 15, okay? And then look at chapters 16 and then go back to 13, all right? And that's all in the Rockoff books. So I'm going to stop the recording and end the meeting, and this will be